Well, hello again. Welcome to Horror in Detail. Today we are going to share Skinwalker encounter stories. First story, my Skinwalker experience. I've seen a lot of posts about Skinwalkers lately, so I thought I'd share my own story. Back about 10 or so years ago, my good friend and I would occasionally take trips to her family's property out in the middle of nowhere. It was fairly remote. You had to drive up a dirt road a few miles and couldn't access it unless you had a key to the chain on the gate. There wasn't anyone around for miles. All that was there was a trailer they had towed up and left to sleep in. The feel out there was always a little off. One day we were wandering around the property, not really thinking much of it until about 20 minutes later when we realized we had actually been walking out into the middle of nowhere. We had no water with us and had no clue where we were. Luckily, we found our way back after a while, but neither of us could explain why we did that. I'd also take my voice recorder, and we caught quite a few strange things on it. One day before heading out there, we were talking about Skinwalker Ranch. It was only about a 40-ish minute drive from the property, so we thought, hey, why don't we go and try to find it? We thought it would be cool to say we had been there. After searching the internet, we found fairly good directions there and headed out for the night. We had a bit of trouble locating it, but after a bit of driving around, we pulled into an area that was spot on from the descriptions we had read. We stepped out of the car, and the first thing we noticed was the mass amounts of bugs swarming us. Only a few short seconds later, we had huge dogs barking, growling, and running at us. We immediately jumped back in the car and took off. We ended up staying in the area for a little longer exploring. Later that night back at her property, we were sitting around the fire talking. All of a sudden, we started hearing barking. It was rather startling, and she immediately froze and said she had never heard barking in the area before. She isn't one to get scared easily, so her uneasiness put me on edge. Not too long after that, there was more barking. Very slowly, we were being surrounded by what I assume are coyotes. We both tired yelling, jumping around, and throwing rocks, but that didn't seem to do any good. I've never known coyotes to act this way. We were terrified and had no clue what to do. Not really wanting to stick around and find out if they'd get any closer to us. We doused the fire and flipped on our flashlights. She grabbed my hand, and we booked it back into the trailer. We were both shaking by the time we made it in, and she locked the door. I don't think either of us slept that well. I heard a lot of weird sounds and felt a sense of dread the entire night. As soon as the sun started to rise, we decided to pack up and get out of there. We neared the car, and what we saw sent chills down my spine. On the driver's side of the car window was a huge handprint made with mud. It was easily twice the size of our hands. We looked at each other and silently agreed that we needed to get the hell out of there. I'm not saying it was a skinwalker, but neither of us have been able to explain it. I've never been back. Second story. Possible skinwalker stalking me in Oregon. Throwaway account for obvious reasons. Fair warning, this takes a while of explanation before I get to the recent events. And sorry if this isn't the absolutely categorically correct place to post this, but I don't know where else to go with my experiences. Some setup stuff about myself before I get to the meat of the story. I live in Oregon, specifically Yamhill County, a moderately sized, mostly rural county. I'm half Native American, half Caucasian, with my tribe being an Algonquin-speaking people of the Anishinaabe. Unfortunately, as I live in Oregon and the Anishinaabe are located around Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Canada, and a pandemic going on right now, I haven't been able to visit my specific tribe as of yet. I'm over 18, though I don't want to disclose my own age for privacy reasons. I live with my mom, who is where I get my Caucasian from, and sister. Dad passed away about 2.5 years ago. We have 3 dogs of varying size and 4 outdoor cats. In the part of Oregon I live in, you're never than 10 minutes away from a forest, 20 from a mountaintop, and even in cities, there's plenty of forestry. I live just outside of one of these towns, only a short, several-minute drive, but far enough to where light pollution doesn't heavily affect me, and I can see the stars rather clearly. I've lived at this house since I was a kid, and though I've always gotten the creeps about this place since it's next to a giant forest, it's been a while since anything I could categorize as paranormal happened to me. I'm a pretty skeptical and not so superstitious person. I think science could explain around 95% of the world's mysteries, though I've seen some stuff I have no rational explanation, and the things that have happened to me over the past 3 days fall solidly into that. I know a decent bit about skinwalkers. They come from the Ute and Navajo tribes' legends, being witches that are the antithesis to medicine men, commonly found around the Four Corners area of the U.S. on and around Navajo reservations. But my knowledge is limited to different internet retellings of the legends, so I only know a few baseline rules. Don't fall for their imitation voices if you smell dead. Rotting meat, then you need to leave ASP. Don't acknowledge its presence directly, don't. Say its name out loud unless you want to attract one. If you want to harm one, you'll need white ashes like that from burnt wood. Burn sage if you suspect one being near you or hunting you. And if you happen to spot its true human identity, then you can say its name and accuse it of being a skinwalker to kill it. How much of that is true, I am still unsure of for a number of reasons. The largest being that I don't think any of the videos I watched were made by natives who would have more intimate knowledge of these creatures. But I could be talking out of my ass on that end for all I know. Some background for this property. According to the previous owners, who were part of a family who have lived here for generations, there was once a log cabin built here on top of a native burial ground, which is also on a long and active volcano. Sounds cliche, I know, but it's absolutely true near as I can tell for the burial ground part, and the inactive volcano part is fully true. There has been a number of odd, unexplainable phenomenon, which I'll keep short to keep with this sub-theme. The most notable include 12-foot metal doors belonging to a car paint booth being shook intensely by absolutely nothing. An old 50s metal gas/oil can flying up from behind a ton of junk and flying directly at one of my dad's friends. A running sound, followed up by the mirror door in my parents' bedroom being shattered at 3 a.m. one night, the exact same time my dad's best man died. Needless to say that while I haven't encountered any big feet or Mothmen, I have seen some stranger things that have no logical explanation. The property I live on is around 10 acres in size. The house is decently large, with a one-car garage and office, which is where my sister is currently chilling out at. Next to it, and a large metal garage around 200 yards east from the house. The smaller garage and the house have motion lights all around their perimeters for proper illumination in case anything or anyone gets near the house, but the larger garage only had a halogen bulb outside its main door that went out last week, and now at night that entire area of the property is pitch black. The house has 3 doors, 2 on a porch to the front yard and driveway, 1 to the laundry room and into the backyard. One the eastmost side is the living room, with 9 windows and one of the doors, a kitchen area with a view onto the porch, another living room type area, and then a hallway to the bathrooms and bedrooms. The office in the smaller garage has 2 entrances, one heading directly into the backyard that's sliding glass, and 2 partially iron, partially glass doors that head into the garage itself. The metal garage was built over the aforementioned cabin and has an attic that spans over the entire length of it. It has a car lift, a paint booth that can fit a limousine, a bathroom, and a scaffolding with a heater, which is where the gas can flow from. Around 15 feet behind the shop is a large forest that I have never stepped foot into due to there being a crazy old man living in it. While I haven't stepped into it, my sister and her friends have headed in a few times, each time returning with odd objects. Though they haven't gone into the forest for several years, I remember them bringing out stuff like Baphomet statues, animal bones, and weird rocks before. Aside from these, the only things we see out here animal-wise are does and baby deer just passing on through our yard to get into the forest. Now for the current events. Around 4 a.m. on Saturday night, I was preparing to go to bed out in my family living room. My room is painted black, and being the summer here, it gets ridiculously hot at day, and I don't have a good AC at the moment, so I'm sleeping out in the living room. As I was about to sleep, I heard the cats fighting. Something not too odd. They're mostly males and get pretty riled up. But then I heard something else, 3 distinct knocks on one of my front doors. This immediately freaked me out for a few reasons. For one, it was 4 a.m. and pitch black outside, and these were knocks far too loud for an animal to make and sounded far too high for them either. Second, my motion tracker lights were still off. After the knocking, my dogs headed towards the other front door. This one is partially iron, partially glass like those on The Office, and lost their fucking minds with barking, something they only ever do when they see something they don't recognize. I locked all my windows, closed all the blinds, and just sat on my couch bed. In my living room, facing out towards the front yard, there is a half-circle shaped window with no blinds that allows me to see when the motion trackers turn on or off, and I sat, staring at this window for about an hour and a half until they finally came on, and the sun came up. I didn't have the courage to look as to what caused the lights to trigger, but from the stories I've heard of skinwalkers, I wasn't going to take a single risk. The next morning, I asked my mom if she had heard a knocking on the door to get a disturbing answer from her and my sister. My mom had also heard the knocking, but also heard it on her windows to the bedroom, and my sister heard it knocking on the sliding glass door to the office. I knew then that this was something that had knocked multiple times, as there is no way I could have mistaken the tapping on my door for something tapping on my sister's door. While the sun was up, my sister and I bought some sage, since from what I know it wards off skinwalkers, but my mom misplaced it before we could burn it. By the time we realized we couldn't find it, the shop we went to had closed, so we had to just hope nothing worse would come that night. The second night was much more disturbing than the first. While I didn't spot anything, I heard a loud, ambient noise from the woods. The nearest broad comparison I could make is like how a city sounds at the dead of night when there's construction, but this sounded more natural in origin in some odd way. Another, much more niche comparison would be the song Cave of the Past from Earthbound, as it's the only song I can think of that fit the ambience. I heard this ambience for around half an hour while I walked my dogs in my front yard, and while I wanted to just stay inside and drown out my paranoia with some anime, my mom had me take out the dogs, claiming that there's nothing out there that could harm you, in spite of the fact that she had heard the knocking the night before. As I was walking the last dog, I heard something from the forest to the east chanting. I only heard about one short sentence in some dialect I couldn't discern, but that was all I needed to hear in order to head inside and lock everything up again. From there, I could hear the ambience even inside my house, and was up again until the sun crested over the hills. One more thing about this night, though. There was a light that refused to go out. It was one of the motion trackers on the one-car garage, and each time I would look out at it, I would see nothing, but yet it stayed on all throughout the night. Finally, tonight, I woke up late, as staying up until sunrise tends to do, so I forgot to get sage before I headed to work. Once I came home from work, it was already dark out, as I get off by the time the sun is setting. Around 2 a.m., I was taking out my dog for the last time. Tonight there wasn't any ambience or chanting, and I stayed strictly to the small plot of yard directly in front of my house. But as I was once again taking out the last dog, I heard a noise to the east, and this scared the shit out of me. It sounded like something large had been knocked over or thrown down, something that was loud enough for me to hear hundreds of yards away. Immediately, I turned towards the noise and tugged on my dog's leash to drag them inside, keeping my back to the illuminated sections of my yard while I went inside. I've locked my doors, my car, and all other things I can, and have tried ignoring everything, but I feel that I need to find help now. These events are slowly escalating, and I only fear that tomorrow could bring a full-on encounter. I've been unable to sleep again thanks to this, and the fact that it's happened 3 nights in a row. Now, while I think it could be a skinwalker, I think it could also be a wendigo. They're similar, and wendigos come from Algonquin-speaking tribes, of which my tribe is part of. If it was the latter, though, I have a hunch it would have made itself more known already, whereas with a skinwalker, methinks it could be trying to lure me out to the darkness of the shop. I've been trying to get a hold of a medicine man here in Oregon, but all I can find on Google is old articles, almost as if it refuses to let me find the help I need so desperately. If anyone knows where I can find one to come bless the house and the property, I would be elated to get this over with. These past few nights alone have been hellish, and I would rather not have to see what I've heard described many a times for myself. Thanks for reading if you've made it this far, and any advice is welcomed. I swear this entire story is true, through and through, and I just want peace out here. P.S. I wrote this last night, and both subs I submitted it to have yet to approve, just saying it's been rejected by the mods. This night when I came home from work, though, I heard a hissing/growl come from the woods behind the garage, and later as I was taking out my dogs, spotted eyes about 7 or 8 feet up directly in front of the big metal garage. At this rate, I fear that when I come home tomorrow or Thursday that it'll just wait out in the road for me. I need help ASAP. I don't know what to do and need advice desperately. Third story, seeing a skinwalker. Now, when I say this story is true, I mean it. At the time, I was 13 years old and was a skeptic when it comes to things like ghosts, aliens, skinwalkers, but this experience opened up my mind about this stuff. At this time, I loved to go out to the woods behind my house, only about 200 meters away. And it was a fun time, but after this, I have a strong fear for the woods. So, it was mid-June and it was a nice summer day. My parents weren't going to be home for some time, so I decided to go to the woods. I was just walking around, gathering supplies for my fort I was making out there. When I was out there, I felt like I was an old Native American. So, I had a small teepee made of thick branches and bark and some rope. It was pretty cool in my opinion. I also had a collection of spears I made with my knife. This would later come in handy. It was getting late, so I decided to put out my fire I made to cook some hot dogs. As I was doing this, I heard the snapping of twigs around me. I was the only out there, but there was quite a bit of rabbits in this area, so I jumped at the chance of hunting one with my spears. So, I crept over to my area with my spears. I grabbed the sharpest one and slowly crept over to where I heard the noise. And I was right, there was a rabbit, but it was dead. It was fresh blood, and I was starting to worry. Just as I turned to run back to put out my fire, I heard my name being called, but it was distorted. It almost sounded like a screech, to be honest. I was scared, but stupid 13-year-old me wanted to investigate. I walked around my woods, every so often hearing that screech and trying to track it. Eventually, I hit the edge of the woods, which was surrounded by field. Those of you who live in Ohio may know what I'm talking about. The fields with random patches of woods in them. But what I saw scared me shitless. What I saw was a deer standing on its 2 hind legs. As soon as I saw it, we both must have flipped our shit and we just ran. I ran back to my teepee, put out the fire, grabbed my satchel, and just ran as fast as my 5-foot self could. But that wasn't the end of it. Later that week, it was about 9 p.m., and it was just getting into the first hour of darkness in the night. I had to take my dogs outside for them to do their business. I could smell the fire of my neighbors making their esmores. But then I heard it again, the screech. It was coming from the woods I mentioned earlier. Luckily, my dogs were done, and I noped inside. Since this, I haven't heard it again and don't want to. Fourth story. A skinwalker is killing our cattle. My family has owned the property we live on for nearly 300 years now. My ancestors came over from Europe and settled here, helping to found the town I live in. And over the years, the amount of property we have come to own has reached 600 acres. Now, the land acts as a farm. We have cows and bulls and donkeys. That being said, it isn't a dairy farm, and we don't butcher the cows. They're really just big pets, honestly. We have had this land for so many years, and it has acquired a pretty hefty property tax over these past few hundred years. So naturally, we turned the land into a farm, and now the animals lower our property taxes. With that in mind, we care for these animals just as they are pets and love them dearly. So, it is no surprise that we are devastated when anything happens to them. Occasionally, they will get old or sick and have to be put down, or they die naturally, which we have a vet that comes and takes care of them when that is the case. Other times, since the property consists of open fields and hundreds of acres of dense woods as well, wild animals such as coyotes, and what we believe have been mountain lions or maybe even bobcats, have attacked our cattle. We have hunters that come and take care of the coyotes for us during coyote hunting season. But like the reports say online, there aren't any confirmed sightings of mountain lions in New Jersey, though my dad swears he has seen them, or at least something that resembles one. Plus, some of the attacks to our cattle are far too gruesome for something as small as a coyote to have done. The other attacks, I was too young to remember, and my dad probably grazed over the details as to not freak me out anyway. But this one happened just this past week. I've been thinking about it a lot. I can't get the sight out of my head. All I can see is torn flesh and blood everywhere. It painted the grass such a dark red, it nearly looked black. Once a few years ago, I had been tie-dyeing shirts and spilled black dye on the grass. And that is exactly what it looked like. So much of it. And it wasn't just around the calf. There was a trail that as I followed it, went off back into the woods. As if whatever did this got so covered in the blood of its own doing that it left a trail behind it as it reverted back to, well, wherever it came from. One of our cows had given birth to a calf that had been too frail and weak to be left out in the fields alone with the other cattle. When this happens, we take the calf back to our own house where we have a calf hutch. For those of you who aren't familiar, they look sort of like little igloos almost. They are these small little huts that the calves stay in, and it gives them a safe, dry, and warm place to stay. Obviously, we can't bring the calf inside with us, as it is a farm animal, and the pole barns are up the road from our residence on the property, so we keep the calf hutch in our backyard. It allows us to have quick and easy access to the calf if anything goes wrong with it or its health. We usually keep a calf like this here at our house for at least a few weeks, to bottle feed it and help nurse it until it is strong enough to return to the field with its mom and the rest of the nearly 150 other cattle. This calf was no different. It had been staying with us for about 2 weeks, and it was getting healthier and stronger by the day. Friday night of this past week, as my dad was falling asleep, he said he heard animal noises in the backyard, but this was nothing out of the sorts. Our backyard was lined by a section of woods, and there were squirrels, deer, and other wild animals that made noises, well, nearly every night. Looking back now, every part of me wishes he went out to check it out, but how could he have known that something was about to brutally murder our calf? And if he did, maybe he would have tried to go after my dad too. The next morning, we woke up and went outside to check on the calf and give it his bottle. But we were not greeted by the cute and fuzzy calf, excited for its milk like we were expecting. Instead, we walked to the backyard and found a massacre. The calf was still alive. That was the worst part. Its organs and intestines were exposed to the cold, dewy morning air. The grass was black, stained with so much blood, and the calf was twitching, convulsing. I have no idea how it was still alive. Whatever tore this calf apart had every intention of killing it. But why? No part of the calf seemed to be missing. There were no teeth marks anywhere. Sure, the flesh was strewn about in a haphazardly made ring of organs and meat and skin, but it was all there. Nothing was gone, as if the animal ate part of the calf. And the marks made by whatever animal No, whatever creature did this, they weren't small claw marks. No, they were long and wide. They looked like goddamn marks made by Wolverine from X-Men or whatever. It was chilling. My dad said he had to put the poor thing out of its misery, but I already knew that was going to be the case at first glance of the calf. There was no way by science and medicine, even by magic or miracles, that this calf could be saved. It was a corpse, still barely alive, but it was a corpse. I couldn't watch. I didn't want to see this animal go through any more pain or torment. Plus, when an animal dies, it only convulses and writhes around more for a minute or so after it dies. I couldn't bear to see that. So, I followed that blood trail that I mentioned earlier. Whatever this was that murdered the poor baby cow. It had left a trail back into those woods on the border of our yard. And not like a trail of dragged blood, but a trail of bloody footprints. Yes, they were footprints, not paw prints from a coyote, wolf, mountain lion, bobcat, or any natural wild animal. Instead, they were footprints of humanesque feet. They were elongated, and I could even see talons or claws maybe where the bottoms of the toenails might have touched the ground. Whatever it was that did this, though they resembled feet of a person, it was not a person. It was not a wild animal, but it was somewhere in between. A skinwalker is my best guess. This land that our property lies on, from what I vaguely remember being told from when I was a child, was once the land of native people. Maybe I should find out more from my dad. If you guys are interested, I'll try and do my research on the land and find out more about what it used to be before my ancestors turned it into our property. Fifth story. Skinwalker encounter at my grandparents' cabin. My grandparents have a cabin in a town in Pennsylvania, south of Scranton. Every summer we usually go up for a few weeks as a family event. Ever since I was little. A few years ago, we decided to go up in the winter because my family wanted to go skiing at some point. After we got there, the weird things started happening really quickly and seemingly out of nowhere. The house was built in the 1920s, old brick and wood home. The doors are these giant, almost church-looking doors, and the style of the home is very medieval, definitely adding to the creepy vibes of the home. The first night was seemingly calm through the house, but whenever I went there, I always felt there was something there, or something lurking through the halls. The first night I got up to go to the bathroom at around 3:10 a.m., which is also interesting because I never get up to go to the bathroom back at home. Most nights I sleep right through without waking up. There were 8 of us in the house, my 2 parents, my grandparents, my aunt and uncle, and my 2 male cousins. I went to one of the 3 main bathrooms for in the house if you count the master. So when I heard someone in there, I thought that was interesting because I was one of the few people who doesn't share the bathroom. But I stood outside waiting to make sure I did not intrude on anything going on in there, as my one cousin has IBS, and I didn't want to bother him. What was extremely weird is the fact that whatever was in there didn't sound human in its movements. It seemed to drag its feet around, which made me nervous that he may be sick. I called out his name a few times. "Drew, are you okay in there? It's been a long time, and I want to go to bed," or something along those lines. A few seconds later, he comes out of his bedroom and tells me why I'm making so much noise, and he's trying to sleep, and slams his door behind him. Before I could freak out, he had already shut the door, and I was too scared to even yell back to him. I never realized before that the door wasn't even locked in the first place, which made me feel even more uneasy. Between the banar, I never realized the sound stopped, and it seemed like nobody was even in the bathroom anymore. I still even tell myself this was just my imagination going wild, but I'm not known for sleepwalking or having any type of sleep disorder. I decided to just open the door, brushing it off as my too vivid imagination. When I opened the door, it really looked like nothing strange had happened in there. But when I was washing my hands, I realized the window was open, and I froze thinking someone had broken into the house. But this was on the second story with nothing to climb up on, making it almost impossible to climb up there. The next day, nothing happened in the daytime, making it seem more to me that it was just a figment of my imagination than reality. But that night I had to let out my dog. She is elderly and never really barks much, nor does she run fast, so this definitely is a case for concern, I thought. When I let her out, she bolted to the edge of the woods and vanished inside them. I tried to follow her barking, but honestly, I was too scared to go into the woods past the tree. When I finally got her to walk back, her back legs seemed off, almost like a person pretending to be a dog walking on the ground. Her eyes were also off. They looked human-like, not her usual dark almond eyes. I freaked out and ran back inside without her. When I got inside, she was sitting panting by the door, so she must have ran back in when I was yelling into the woods to try to find her. At this point, I didn't even want to leave that house for fear of what was lurking in the woods. I had no previous information on skinwalkers or even knew what they were, so I had not connected the dots yet. The last night we stayed, there was the most interesting and confusing turn of events that had happened. We all had skied all day, so we went to bed quite early, around 9 to 10. I never fall asleep early, as I am usually a night owl, but I woke up around 12 a.m. to sounds of my cousin Drew yelling outside. I woke up in a fog and tried to quickly rush to the door and open it. I didn't even take into consideration that the door was still locked from the inside. When I got outside, his voice seemed to be coming from multiple directions and echoing through the valley. I saw him by the cars yelling, and when I started to go outside and call out his name, he looked at me quickly. His eyes got huge, and he ran into the woods with a beckoning gesture for me to follow. I decided that was definitely a bad idea, so I woke up his parents, and he ended up being asleep in his room the whole time. Not now until years later did I even find out about skinwalkers from one of my Native American friends I met in college. I still have no idea what was out there that weekend, and I haven't been back since. Sixth story. I think I met a skinwalker. Growing up in Arizona, I can say I was raised in a melting pot. Yeah, I know, pun intended. It's hot out here, but honestly, I met a lot of cool kids, including some of the Navajo children. They weren't any different than me. They just have separate cultural norms than my family. During class earlier this week, one of my friends joked around about something called a skinwalker. Immediately, the Navajo children shot a pissed and worrisome look to him. I decided to confront him. Hey dude, it looks like you really upset them. So what, it's not my fault they're afraid of skinwalkers, he yelped, putting special volume and enunciation on the last words. As silly as it is, I didn't even know what that was. So I asked him and he responded, "Ick, but I love to piss those kids off." Later in gym class, I walked to the bleachers from the track to the kids. "Hey fellas, I'm sorry for my friend. He can be a real jerk sometimes. They told me not to worry about it. You know, guys, you don't have to, but can you guys tell me what a skinwalker is? I've never even heard of it till this day." One of the kids started looking around cautiously, and I felt like he was about to tell me, but he hesitated as a grasshopper bounced off his foot. You know, I think you're better off not knowing, and even more better off not saying their name. Feeling defeated, I walked home to my family's ranch. I noticed as I was about on the porch, there was a couple coyotes nearby. They've always been a big problem in this area. They've bothered my family's livestock, and a donkey can only kill so many. Normally, I could scare them off by tossing a rock or something, but when I did, they remained still. I walked inside and told my dad about the coyotes, and he loaded up his shotgun. Dad wasn't much a hunter, but he had no sympathy for invasive coyotes and rattlesnakes. He kept a single-shot 12-gauge by the door in the event one of the two made their way on the property. Dad walked out and peppered the ground near one. All of them scattered but one. He got into a stare down with my dad and wasn't bucking under the threat of being pumped full of shell. I saw Dad popping another shell, and he fired again, striking the coyote and laying it down. He hollered at me that he was going to drag the body off the property and would be back shortly. That evening, he came in limping. Not like in a pain limp, but in an awkward one that seemed unlike anything I'd seen before. Dad, what happened? Did you twist an ankle? No, son. Fell carrying carcass. Be okay? Great. He had been drinking again. I bet that's took him so long. Probably hit the bottle in the barn once he hauled the coyote away. Lord knows this wasn't the first time that's happened. I figured while he was drunk, I could ask him about skinwalkers. Dad was pretty superstitious, which makes sense why he wouldn't try to scare me with ghost stories. Dad, someone at school said something about skinwalkers, and I've never heard of such a thing. Do you know anything about that? He instantly sobered up. Well, listen here, boy. Skinwalkers are magnificent witches who can transform themselves into animals. Most of the kids at your school wouldn't dare speak of them because they fear them. But that's all fake, right? Dad chuckled. No. You never know when one is near. Could be any animal. Some of the ones can be insects, people. They are masters of disguise. He stood up and hobbled out the door. Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong, and mind who your company is. He then walked back out the barn. Later that night, he walked in and took his boots off. Hey, Dad, I'm sorry for bringing up skinwalkers. I know you've worked hard all day and don't have time to answer questions. Son, what are you talking about? Did you fall asleep? I hauled the coyote off and loaded it on the trailer to take for a proper burial. I just pulled in. 7th story. Skinwalker took my cousin. When something like this happens, it happens out of absolutely nowhere with no warning. It's not some horror movie or story where you know something is about to happen. I'm going to describe what I felt and what I saw. I've been looking for somewhere to share this, and hopefully someone can tell me what happened. I had never heard of Reddit or skinwalkers or anything before this happened. I wish I could say something cliche like I was on Skinwalker Ranch or my grandma is a Navajo or some shit like that, but I can't. I had never heard of the Navajo Indians or skinwalkers or anything, and I sure as hell didn't believe anything like that existed or even gave a fuck about it. I am 16 years old, and this happened this summer, June 9th, 2018. I grew up in the suburbs near Atlanta, so I had a completely normal life until this happened. I was off of school, so me and my dad went up to Denver to visit my uncle and aunt and my cousin. I have no other cousins my age except for this one, so we were pretty close and kept in touch often. His name is Charlie, but we share the same last name cause his dad is my dad's brother, so I won't use our last name. Charlie was pretty big on mountain biking, so he wanted to take me to some mountain biking trails in Apex Park. The trails are not far away from civilization at all, and we weren't even going to spend the night there. We went down a few trails, everything was fine, and we passed some people, so we weren't alone. Absolutely nothing sketchy went down. It was hard to keep up with him, but he slowed down for me, and we had fun. It was around 6 p.m., and we were heading back to where we parked. Charlie was 18, so we drove ourselves. This is the part where everything goes to hell. We are riding back. Charlie is maybe 20 feet ahead of me. Then the smell hit me. God, the smell. It was disgusting. At first, I thought maybe we passed a dead animal or something. It was more metallic, though, and it was very heavy in the air. Charlie stops, but doesn't get off his bike. I slow down and stop next to him. He looks at me with a disgusted face. Do you smell that? What the fuck? The smell started to get stronger. It was so strong that I felt like gagging. Looking back, I wish that I had felt something watching us, or at least any indication that something was not right, so that we could have left or found somebody. I guess Charlie had heard stories about these things because I saw his face change from disgust to absolute fucking terror as the realization hit him. Oh fuck. In less than 1 second from him, saying that something went by so fast and tore him off that bike. I did not see it because I could barely process what the absolute fuck was going on. I was still on my bike staring at the place he just was. Chills flooded my body so fast that my vision went black even though my eyes were open. Then the adrenaline hit me. My brain pounding, but I had no thoughts. I didn't scream. Then I fucking looked up. It was right there. so fucking close to me. It looked down at me because it was huge, maybe a couple feet taller than me. I wish I could tell you I didn't get a good look, but it's always crystal clear in my memory. It was like a wolf, but standing upright like a person. Its fur was matted and greasy and fucking disgusting. But that wasn't what I was looking at. It had Charlie's face, smiling at me. The closest thing I can describe my reaction to is when the people in Bird Box see the monsters. God, I am crying writing this right now. The smile was pure evil, but indescribable. Its mouth was way too big, and it was literally smiling from ear to ear. Then the eyes. Oh God, the eyes. They were pure black, but not glossy. Like the black that absorbs 99% of light. At first, I couldn't even tell if he had eyes, but they were blacker than empty, if that makes sense. It is very hard to describe this. It wasn't breathing, just standing absolutely still. I could feel the strength radiating off of it, like a power not of this earth. There was no sign of Charlie anywhere. No screaming. Nothing. I knew I was next. I knew 100% I was going to die. My eyes flooded, but it wasn't like I was crying. The pure fear and chills just made my tear ducts run. Suddenly it dashed away, so quick I felt and heard the air rush around me. I felt someone grab my shoulder. "Kid, are you okay?" It was a fit guy in his mid-40s and his wife. I hadn't even heard them approach. Keep in mind that from Charlie saying, "Do you smell that?" to this guy grabbing me on the shoulder was about a 10-second span. All the things I just described were the emotions that were flooding me in that time, not actual thoughts. Then it hit me. I couldn't speak. I was gasping for air, my head pounding, vision blurry. "Are you okay, kid?" I just cried, and I was trembling so hard the guy thought I was having a seizure. I don't remember leaving the trail. I just remember getting to the exit, then getting to the hospital. Charlie is gone. After that, he went missing, but I know he is dead. They only found his bike completely destroyed. They sent a search party after him. No one believed me. They think he just got lost and or attacked by an animal. I went home. I have diagnosed PTSD now and nightmares almost every night. My life has been completely destroyed by this, and I know nothing will ever be the same. I couldn't leave my house for a long time. The days after that I spent researching what that thing was, and the closest thing I guess would be a skinwalker. It's nice to know I'm not the only one, and people on this site can actually believe each other. Everyone thinks I am crazy. 8th story. I think I encountered a skinwalker. I have no evidence, but I promise you all this story is real. Sorry for the wall of text. I've always been a bit of a skeptic ever since I was a kid. Scary stories don't faze me. Horror games never frighten me. And whenever I hear something weird at night, I instantly assume it's something normal, an animal or just the house settling. Despite this, something very unsettling happened to me the other day, and I'm really not sure what to make of it. I think it's the first time in years I've been genuinely frightened. I live in a forested area in the U.S. Me and my girlfriend live in a large cabin, and although there are roads nearby, our nearest neighbors are at least a kilometer away. We also have 2 cats, one of which sleeps in the bedroom with us, whilst the other often goes out at night and does whatever cats do when they're out of sight. Anyway, I like to stay up late at night and sleep late into the morning, whereas my girlfriend's an early bird. It was about 1 a.m, and I was watching crappy TV in the living room whilst my girlfriend slept in the bedroom. I was beginning to grow tired when I heard something outside, near the cat flap. For clarity, our cat flap uses an electronic chip, so only our cats can use it. I assumed it was just one of the cats coming into or leaving the house, and I ignored it. Then I heard it again. It sounded like something thudding against the flat. It happened several times at random intervals until I lost my patience and decided to just go and open the door. Clearly the cat was having trouble getting in. I never thought about it at the time, but this was weird because we feed our cats well, and they're very lean rather than chubby. I passed the bedroom and peered in as I walked past to see if my girlfriend heard the noises. She was fast asleep, but the cat that sleeps with us was staring at the window. I called her name. Nothing. She kept staring. I shrugged it off. and kept heading towards the kitchen. The back doors are through there, by the way. Anyway, so I reached the back door and saw a dark shape through the translucent flap. I sighed, expecting the cat to be out there, and opened the door. It took me a moment to open the door, and I saw the cat tense up as I opened the door. The door opened fully. I froze. It wasn't my cat. Whatever it was had started moving before I opened up, and I only caught a glimpse of a distorted figure, kind of like a tailless dog, bolting, and I mean absolutely pelting it. I freaked out and slammed the door shut. What the hell was it? I wasn't sure. My natural skepticism kicked in, and I assumed it was just my other cat, and I had merely startled it. Perhaps the darkness had made it appear larger. Nevertheless, I was creeped out and decided to go to sleep. As I slipped into bed, I realized something horrifying. The second cat was asleep on the rug. It took a while to get to sleep that night. Everything seemed normal until a few hours later. I awoke to a strange feeling of dread. Something wasn't right. My girlfriend was fast asleep. I held my breath and heard something creaking by the door. It sounded too loud to be one of the cats. It was as if a person was walking about. I reached towards my bedside cabinet and flicked on the lamp. The room was illuminated, and I saw something standing just outside the open door, staring at me. The same twisted figure I had spotted outside earlier. It wasn't very tall, maybe a little over 5 feet, but it was its face that scared me the most. I only caught a glimpse of it, but what I saw will stay with me forever. It looked like a dog, but with an elongated face and almost human-like eyes. You know that weird, distorted snarl hounds pull when they're pissed off? It had that expression. I instantly started yelling profanities as I scrabbled backwards, trying to straighten up. The creature turned and sprinted down the hall. I heard it dash outside and go past the window behind us, just above the headboard. I managed to look out as my girlfriend started to panic as she woke up fully. We both caught a glimpse of whatever the hell this thing was as it dashed off into the woods near our home. Grabbing my trusty shotgun from beneath the bed, as well as a couple rounds from the ammunition box that sits next to it, I ran out of the room in my underwear and rounded into the kitchen. The door was open. I'd forgotten to lock it when I saw the thing originally. I haven't seen it since, and we still live in our cabin, but I've bought sturdy locks for all of the main doors and windows in the house, and always check the exit points at night. I also go to bed a bit earlier than I used to, so I'm asleep when the freaks of the night start to wake up. I've read a bunch of forums, and the only thing I can compare it to, based on what I saw, is a skinwalker. If you know anything about these things, please let me know. 9th story. Skinwalker stories? I'm trying to do some research for a project about skinwalkers, wendigos, and doppelgangers and their origins, sources of information, and people's experiences. The crazier the better. The main goal is learning people's in and around North America's folklore. But to make it even, perhaps I have an easy story of a skinwalker myself. Disclaimer. I have no idea what I saw. I just described it to a friend, and skinwalker was the term he used, and showed me a picture, and both me and my wife, who was there with me, jumped out of our seats because it was nearly a perfect representation of what we saw. Also, again, this is a super simple story. Late August last year, my wife and I decided to take a trip to Fredericksburg, TX, to celebrate our engagement. We were there for wine tasting, beer houses, and cute knick-knack shopping. The casual/vanilla fun stuff we die for. If you haven't been and can, do go. It's great. We had a cabin rented out in the Wash, I think they called it. It was dry land surrounded in hills, and just imagine your typical dry Western environment. Brown hills, some trees, and random cacti everywhere, and signs saying no burning scattered around the property and next to the fire pit, which we thought was pretty hysterical. We were on our way back past 10 p.m. from downtown, and we had these what we called cow roads to get back to the cabin because there were cattle scattered on both sides of the road, and all the gates were all open, and you'd have to wait for them to cross every now and then. We joked the cows own these roads. We're just tourists. This is all to say, we were driving slowly because God forbid a cow walked in front of us, I'd one total my Jeep, but worst, hurt or possibly kill someone's cow, and it left us open to what happened next. We were talking, laughing, making jokes, and trying not focus on how it was pitch black around us. My convertible top was down, and we just felt vulnerable. When in front of us was this black figure on the left side of the road, dirt road mind you, not very wide, maybe a car and a half. It was on all fours, had this short body, long legs, and massive head, and was black. As we got closer, there was a hue mixing of black and gray to its skin and fur, but it was hard to tell what was fur or skin. I wasn't nervous, but I slowed down because I didn't want to hit this thing I thought was some sort of wolf/coyote thing, and we were maybe something over 500 feet away and getting closer. By the time I could really look at it, it was in the middle of this road, and we were even closer, literally a stone's throw away, and it turned to face, but as it turned, it stood up, and what we thought were back legs, but just human-like because this thing flat stood up and looked at us and turned back the way it came, but went back to all fours as it walked. When it faced us, its eyes glowed yellow. I remembered wolves glowing red. I could still be wrong, which added my confusion in the moment. This thing looked so off, and we realized its short body was more like our torso, and it moved so awkwardly because it really was like a person walking on all fours. But its head was a thing of nightmares. That's all I know. It looked right at us. I had my brights on, so maybe it actually was blinded and just left, but I was scared enough to think it looked right at me. I started driving off, and my wife, and I didn't say a word for a few minutes that felt like forever. She started to say, "Did you?" And I just said, "Yeah," before she could finish her sentence. If she wasn't there to confirm it, I would have said it was a trick of the night and gone to bed. Like I said, though, easy story that's lead to me wanting to learn more about these things, and well, not be a where's Bigfoot guy, but kind of, I'm just genuinely interested to see what other have seen and know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought skinwalkers were an Arizona, New Mexico creature. 10th story. My grandfather saw a skinwalker. My grandfather told me a story once, as we sat around a campfire in his backyard, in the cool night of the Arizona desert. The horizon was clear, and each star twinkled in a purple sky, with a full fat moon hanging low over the mountains. His voice was raspy and gravelly, the result of a lifetime of smoking cigars and drinking whiskey. The fire danced and shined across his wide, dark eyes as he settled into his seat, ready to tell his story. "Way back when I was a boy, about your age," he began, "I lived outside an Apache reservation with your great-grandfather. He had returned from the war and set about raising horses and cattle on 100-acre ranch settled between a brambly mountainside with dirt good for growing thorn brush and not much else. One night, my mother was sick, and Pa and I took a trip into town about 50 miles away, straight through a dry desert, over a washed-out creek, and some old abandoned farmsteads. The fire sparked, and a log cracked, jolting me out of the story. What next? I asked. Settle down, boy. You'll hear soon enough. Pa and I were driving in an old Ford pickup truck. I remember it was dark out, inky and thick, with only the lights of our old truck lighting up the road. I remember, too, when the engine began to sputter and the truck slowed to a jerky stop. "God damn it," Pa said, guiding the Ford to the side of the road as it coasted to a halt. "Stay here, son," as he stepped out into the darkness, shutting the door with a heavy thud. My window was down, and the cool desert air was breezy and felt good on my hot face and neck. Pa was getting water from the back to cool the engine, and that's when I smelled it. Rotten eggs. Strange, I thought, to smell sulfur in the desert. My nose also picked up carrion, like one of them dead, bloated cattle that would drop from the heat and lay there until the crows pecked enough holes in their hide to cause the whole thing to explode. It stunk and I gagged. My skin started to tingle too, the back of my neck felt itchy, and my face started to get hot. The wind stopped blowing and hung still and heavy, with the stink filling the cab. "Pa," I called. "Pa, PA." No answer. My heart started beating, and I felt such a fear in me, in my bones, in my chest. Boy, I tell you, I never felt fear like this. Not until Vietnam. Not until I saw men dying around me. I locked the door and reached over for my pa door and saw a shadow bound across the road through both dim beams of light across the partly open domed hood. Grandfather paused. He spit a fat wad of tobacco spit off to his side, and he looked pensively into the darkness. I realized I was holding my breath and gasped for air. The night was cool, but I was sweating and clammy. Well, what happened? What about your father? What did you see? He sighed. A creature. He shook his head. You have to understand, there were legends older than the rock cairns out in the valley, older still than Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull, than the old Indian chiefs and their shamans. The Apache and Hapa and Cherokee and all them old tribes and First Peoples, they told tales, old stories about dark Indian magic, a deal made with the old spirits of blood sacrifice to gain power, old power, enough to fight each other, and the Spaniards, and later the white men that came for their land and women. They called them. He paused. Grandfather took a deep breath and bodied forward into his tale. Across the fire and the sky, the desert, the creek, the moon, the sun, and old mountains, he bodied forward. They called them skinwalkers, shape changers, old warriors resurrected as skinless men, all sinew and muscle, walking on deer legs, with the torso of a man and the head of a coyote. But messed up, boy, long and malformed snouts, teeth like a Bowie knife, long arms, and standing 7 foot, even hunched over. They'd gut the old cowboys and white riders. They'd run through bullets and sabers, part the Spanish armor like it was a potato sack. Wily, too. They could change their voice to match a person you knew or might know. Boy, that's what I saw. Big and fast, only for a second it ran across the road. Gray and mottled, muscle flexing under its legs, hooves clomping on the road, stringy muscled hunched shoulders. And it turned, looked right into the cab, looked right into my eyes, and I swear, boy, I swear it grinned at me. I sank into my seat, in shock and fear, shaking. I knew death was near. The air was electric. I smelled ozone and brimstone. The air felt like right before the lightning comes and blows a tree to smithereens. Charged and full with power. I yelled for my pa, but no words came out, just a dry squeak. I was shaking as Grandfather told his story. He was still here, so I know he lived, but the supernatural always fascinated me. And even now, I felt the force of his words. The real power of skinwalkers was trickery. Sure, they could change their voices, but also their skin. That's why the gods took their hide. So they could take others. Not for long, the legends say. Maybe an hour. Before the soul of the skin they wore would come looking for their mortal shell before going to whatever hell awaited them. Though I think that getting skinned alive was hell enough. A minute passed in what felt like a lifetime, 1 second in 1,000 years. My father's door opened, and I jerked my head to the left, putting my fists up to fend off attack. "Son, it's me," my father said before climbing into the cab. He grasped the steering wheel and pulled himself in awkwardly, jerking himself into the seat. I cringed into the corner. I looked at him. I looked hard. "Boy, your great-grandfather was a good man, treated me and my ma right. He fought the Nazis and saw the worst of man in Poland when he freed all them camps. And now I was taking his measure. Is this my father? Do I make a run, or do I die? Is it him or not? Let's go get that medicine for your ma," as he pulled the truck into gear and pulled it out onto the road, and our trip resumed. I guess it was him after all. But how did you know? Was it because he said something about your mom? No, boy, I knew, because out the window, out the corner of my eye, I seen that beast running 50 miles an hour right next to the car, looking at me with them yellow eyes and grinning mouth. I looked and saw it, hunched and angry, running next to us, boy. My pa kept his eyes on the road, locked straight forward. "Son," he said, "don't look at it, don't look at it." That's how I knew, boy. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Subscribe to our channel Horror in Detail. Drop your opinions/suggestions in the comment section and like the video as it helps with the YouTube algorithm.